I was sitting next to my 5-year-old grandson when he grabbed my wrist so tight his little fingernails left marks. "Grandpa," Devin whispered, his voice shaking like a leaf in a storm. "We need to leave. Right now." The Buckhead ballroom glowed around us with crystal chandeliers and white roses. My son Jerome stood at the head table in his navy tuxedo, arm around his new bride Cassandra, both of them smiling for the photographer like they'd won the lottery. The jazz band played at last, while 200 guests clinked champagne flutes and carved into their salmon. But my grandson's face was pale as fresh snow. "What's wrong, little man?" I kept my voice low, gentle. At 73, I'd learned that scared children need calm voices, not questions that make them feel crazier. Devin's big brown eyes darted around the table, then fixed on mine. "You didn't open your box, did you?" I looked down at the wedding favor sitting between my water glass and bread plate. Every guest had one, a small white cardboard box tied with silver ribbon, the couple's initials stamped in gold. Looked innocent enough. Wedding candy, maybe some chocolate mints? "Should I not open it?" I asked. He shook his head fast, curls bouncing. "Mama Carmen told me before she went to heaven. She said if anything ever feels wrong at a party, find Grandpa and don't eat the candy." My chest tightened. Carmen had been Jerome's first wife, Devin's mother. Lost her in a car accident 2 years ago when she was only 28. Smart girl, that one. Had a way of sensing trouble before it knocked on your door. I picked up the favor box. The weight was off, too heavy for candy. When I shook it gently, something solid knocked against the sides. Not chocolate. Something harder. "Come on," I said, standing up and taking Devin's hand. "Let's go get some air." We slipped away from the table while everyone watched the couple's first dance. Nobody noticed an old bus driver and a little boy heading for the hallway. That's the thing about being 73, people stop seeing you unless they need something. The hotel corridor was quieter, carpeted in soft gold that muffled our footsteps. Devin stayed close to my side, one hand gripping the seam of my jacket. "Tell me what your mama said," I whispered. "She said grown-ups sometimes do bad things when they think nobody's watching. She said you were the only one who would always protect me no matter what." My throat went thick. Carmen had been like a daughter to me, especially after my wife Nia passed 3 years back. Carmen used to bring Devin by every Sunday after church, and we'd sit on my porch while he played with his toy cars in the dirt. She had this way of watching people, reading them like my Nia used to. "She told you not to trust anyone else?" I asked. "She said some people smile with their teeth but not their eyes. She said if I ever felt scared at a party, don't eat anything and find you." I found a quiet alcove near the restrooms and knelt down so we were eye level. The wedding favor felt warm in my hand like it was alive. "You feel scared now?" He nodded. "Something's wrong, Grandpa. I can feel it in my stomach." I believed him. Children know things adults talk themselves out of knowing. My Nia always said that. Before she died, she'd pull me aside and say things like, "Watch that nurse with the blonde hair," or "Don't trust the man with the briefcase." Turned out she was right every time. And Devin had that same gift. I turned the favor box over in my hands. The bottom had a tiny pinprick hole, barely visible. Like someone had poked a needle through the cardboard. The ribbon looked loose too, like it had been untied and retied. "We're going to step outside," I told Devin. "Get your jacket." "Are we leaving?" "Not yet. But we're going to figure out what's in this box before we do anything else." As we walked toward the exit, I caught sight of Cassandra at the head table. She was watching us with those ice blue eyes of hers, a smile painted on her lips that didn't reach anywhere near her heart. When she saw me looking, she raised her champagne glass in a little toast. Something cold crawled up my spine. My grandson squeezed my hand tighter. "She's one of the ones with teeth but no eyes," he whispered. That's when I knew we were in trouble. Real trouble. Outside in the hotel parking lot, under the yellow glow of streetlights, I finally opened that box. My hands were shaking like I was 90 instead of 73. Devin stood close enough that I could feel his breath on my arm, both of us staring at that innocent white cardboard like it might bite. The ribbon came off easy, too easy, like someone had practiced untying it. Inside, nestled in white tissue paper, sat a small device about the size of a matchbox. Black plastic with a tiny red button and what looked like a speaker. Underneath it was a folded piece of paper with one line written in familiar handwriting. "Press play when you're somewhere safe. Trust no one else. Carmen." My blood turned to ice water. Carmen had been dead for 2 years. But that was her handwriting, neat and careful like she used to write grocery lists. I'd know it anywhere. Is that from Mama? Devin asked in a tiny voice. I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up tight. I looked around the parking lot. Cars everywhere, but no people. The hotel's back entrance was 50 feet away, door propped open for the catering staff. Music and laughter drifted out like everything was normal inside. But nothing about this was normal. I pressed the red button. Carmen's voice came out clear as day, like she was standing right next to us. Daddy Marcus, if you're hearing this, then something happened to me and Devin is in danger. Devin gasped and grabbed my arm with both hands. The recording continued. I've been investigating some things about Jerome and his new girlfriend. Things that made my stomach sick. I found out they've been planning something and it involves the trust fund I set up for Devin. I sat down hard on the hood of my old Buick. Trust fund? Carmen had never mentioned any trust fund. I put away $2.5 million from my insurance settlement after that construction accident at my job. Her voice went on. It's in Devin's name, but it requires 2 signatures to access. Mine was one. Yours is the other. The world started spinning. $2.5 million? I made you the co-trustee because you're the only person I trust to put Devin first. But Jerome found out about the money. He's got gambling debts, Daddy Marcus. Bad ones. And Cassandra isn't who she says she is. Devin was crying now, silent tears rolling down his cheeks. I pulled him close against my side. I recorded this 3 days ago, Carmen's voice continued. I'm scared they're going to try to hurt me. If something happens, if I have an accident or get sick suddenly, you need to know it wasn't an accident. Check the storage unit. Unit 247 at Safekeep Storage on Ponce de Leon. The key is taped under Devin's toy box in his bedroom. Get there fast. The recording crackled with static, then Carmen's voice came back softer, sadder. Tell my baby boy his mama loves him more than all the stars in the sky. And Daddy Marcus, don't let them take him from you. They'll try. But don't let them. The device went silent. I sat there in that parking lot with my grandson crying against my chest and my world cracking apart like an egg dropped on concrete. Carmen's car accident. The police said she fell asleep at the wheel, ran off the road into Miller's Creek. But Carmen never fell asleep driving. She was the most careful driver I'd ever known, always checking her mirrors, always using her signals. Used to drive my Nia crazy because she went 5 miles under the speed limit everywhere. And Jerome's gambling. I'd suspected something was wrong. He'd been asking to borrow money, always had some excuse about work being slow or the truck needing repairs. But gambling debts? How deep was he in? Grandpa. Devin's voice was small and scared. Is Mama really gone? Yes, baby boy. She's gone. But she left us a message because she loves you so much. Are the bad people going to hurt us? I looked back at the hotel, its windows glowing warm and golden. Inside, my son was celebrating his wedding. But outside in the dark, his little boy was asking if bad people were going to hurt us. And I didn't know the answer. Not if I can help it, I said, meaning every word. We're going to go get what your mama left for us. Then we're going to figure out what to do. I helped Devin into the car and started the engine. As we pulled out of the parking lot, I caught a glimpse of Cassandra in one of the hotel's upper windows. She was on a phone, pacing back and forth, her face twisted with anger. She wasn't looking for us yet, but she would be soon. Devin, I said as we drove through the Atlanta night toward Ponce de Leon, your mama was smart. Smarter than all of us. She saw this coming and she prepared for it. She left us treasure? Something like that, little man. Something like that. But I had a feeling that whatever Carmen had left us in that storage unit was going to change everything. And maybe get us both killed in the process. Safekeep Storage on Ponce de Leon looked like every other storage place in Atlanta. Rows of beige metal buildings that held people's broken dreams and forgotten furniture. At 11:30 at night, the place was dead quiet except for the hum of security lights and the distant rumble of traffic on the highway. I called Pastor Ellis on the way over. Ellis had been our family's pastor for 20 years, married Jerome and Carmen, baptized Devin, and buried my Nia. If anybody could help me make sense of this mess, it was him. He pulled up in his old Ford just as Devin and I reached the front gate. Even at his age, Ellis moved like a man who'd spent his life carrying other people's burdens. Gray beard, kind eyes, and hands that had prayed over more hospital beds than I could count. Marcus, he said, pulling me into a quick hug. You sounded rattled on the phone. What's going on? I showed him the recording device and told him everything. The wedding favor, Carmen's voice, the trust fund, the storage unit key we'd found taped under Devon's toy box just like she said. Ellis listened without interrupting, the way good pastors do. When I finished, he looked down at Devon, who was holding tight to my hand. Son, Ellis said gently, your mama was a smart woman. Sounds like she wanted to make sure you'd be safe no matter what happened. Unit 247 was halfway down the second row. The key turned easy, and the metal door rolled up with a screech that echoed off the concrete walls. Inside was a small room packed with boxes, a filing cabinet, and an old rocking chair that had belonged to Carmen's grandmother. But what caught my attention was the table in the center with another recording device sitting on top of a manila folder thick as a phone book. Alice turned on the overhead light. Lord have mercy, he said softly. The folder was labeled Devon's Protection in Carmen's handwriting. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, insurance papers, and photographs. Lots of photographs. I picked up the second recording device. This one was bigger, professional looking. A yellow sticky note on top read, "For Daddy Marcus, the whole truth." My hands shook as I pressed play. Carmen's voice filled the storage unit, but this time she sounded tired, scared. Daddy Marcus, this is my insurance policy. If something happens to me, everything you need is in this folder. Alice and I looked at each other. Devon sat in the rocking chair, rocking slowly back and forth like he was trying to comfort himself. The trust fund is real, Carmen's voice continued. 2.4 million from my accident settlement. I set it up so that only you and I can access it. Jerome doesn't know the full amount. I told him it was much smaller. She paused and I heard papers rustling in the background. But I found out he's been trying to get around the restrictions. He owes money to some dangerous people, Daddy Marcus. Vincent Torres, he's a loan shark who runs poker games in the back of his construction business. Jerome owes him $340,000. My stomach dropped. $340,000? How could my boy get himself in that deep? Torres has been pressuring Jerome to find a way to get the money fast. That's when Cassandra showed up. The recording continued. Her real name is Cassandra Wells. She's done this before, found men with money problems and helped them solve those problems by eliminating obstacles. Usually family members with inheritance claims. Ellis grabbed my arm. Marcus. There's more, Carmen's voice said. I hired a private investigator. She's been married 4 times. 3 of those husbands had elderly parents or relatives who died in accidents shortly after the weddings. Car crashes, falls downstairs, heart attacks. Always ruled accidental, but the pattern is clear. I felt like I was going to be sick. They're planning to kill you, Daddy Marcus. After the wedding, they're going to stage an accident. Make it look like you had a heart attack or fell down some stairs. Then Jerome gets emergency custody of Devon, and as his guardian, he can access the trust fund. Devon stopped rocking. Grandpa, are they going to hurt you? I couldn't answer. My throat had closed up completely. Carmen's voice grew urgent. The investigator's report is in the folder. So are the financial records showing Torres's operation. I also recorded a conversation between Jerome and Cassandra where they discussed the timeline. It's all there. Alice opened the folder and pulled out a thick stack of photos. Bank records. Credit reports. A professional investigator's report with confidential stamped across the top. If you're hearing this, Carmen concluded, then they succeeded in killing me. But they won't get Devon. I've made sure of that. There's a lawyer named Patricia Henderson who helped me set up the trust. Her business card is in the folder. She has copies of everything. The recording ended with Carmen's voice breaking. Tell my baby boy his mama will always be watching over him. And Daddy Marcus, don't let them win. Don't let them take him. Silence filled the storage unit like a heavy blanket. Ellis flipped through the investigator's report, his face getting darker with each page. Marcus, this woman, Cassandra, she's killed before. Multiple times. I looked at the photographs scattered across the table. Jerome at a poker game looking desperate. Cassandra talking to a man with cold eyes. Torres, I assumed. Bank records showing the debt growing month by month. And then a photo that made my blood freeze. Jerome and Cassandra in what looked like a hotel room, heads close together, looking at something on her phone. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 days ago. 3 days ago. The same day Carmen made her final recording. They'd been planning this while Carmen was still alive. "We have to call the police," Ellis said. "With what?" "A recording from a dead woman and some photos." I shook my head. "They'll say it's grief talking. That I'm a paranoid old man who can't accept his son's happiness." "Then what do we do?" I looked at Devin, still rocking in his grandmother's chair, trusting me to keep him safe. What Carmen discovered about my son would shatter any father's heart. But right now, I needed to hear from people who understood what it meant to protect family. Comment below where you're listening from. This story needs to reach every grandparent who's ever had to choose between love and truth, because what happened next would test everything I thought I knew about being a father. "We go back to that wedding," I said finally, "and we get the proof we need to put them away forever." Back in the storage unit, Ellis pulled out a thick manila envelope marked "Evidence" in Carmen's careful handwriting. Inside were photographs that made my hands shake and my heart break into 1,000 pieces. The first photo showed Jerome sitting across from a man with dead eyes and expensive clothes at what looked like a restaurant booth. The timestamp read 6 months ago. Jerome's face was pale, desperate, like a man drowning in deep water. "That's Vincent Torres," Ellis said, reading the investigator's notes clipped to the photo. "Runs high-stakes poker games out of his construction office. Also handles loans for people who can't get money anywhere else." The interest rates were written in red ink across the bottom of the page. 30% per month, compounded weekly. No wonder Jerome looked sick. The next photos showed my son at different locations over several months. Outside Torres's office, at a downtown hotel, in parking lots having what looked like heated conversations. In every picture, Jerome looked smaller, more beaten down. Then came the photos of Cassandra. Real name, Cassandra Marie Wells, I read from the report. Born 1987 in Valdosta, Georgia. Married Thomas Brennan, 2018. Husband's father died in fall-down basement stairs 3 months after wedding. Inherited $400,000. My stomach turned as I kept reading. Married Robert Chin, 2020. Mother-in-law died in car accident 4 months after wedding. Inherited $600,000. Married David Polk, 2022. Grandfather died of heart attack 6 months after wedding. Inherited $850,000. 3 dead relatives. 3 convenient accidents. 3 inheritances. "She's a professional black widow," Ellis whispered. But the worst was yet to come. I opened another envelope and found printed text messages between Jerome and Cassandra. My son's phone number was right there at the top, clear as day. "Jerome, Torres is getting impatient. Says he'll hurt Devin if I don't pay by Christmas. Cassandra, don't worry baby. After we're married, your dad will have an accident. Heart attack maybe. Stress of the wedding. Happens to old men all the time. Jerome, I can't let you hurt my father. Cassandra, it's him or your son. Torres doesn't make empty threats. You know what happened to Carmen when she got too close?" My blood turned to ice. I read that last message 3 times, hoping I was seeing it wrong. But there it was in black and white. "Cassandra, you know what happened to Carmen when she got too close?" Ellis grabbed my arm. "Marcus, sit down. You look like you're about to fall over." I couldn't sit. I couldn't breathe. My son knew. Jerome knew they'd killed Carmen and he'd stayed quiet. He'd let me grieve my daughter-in-law's death thinking it was an accident while he planned to let them kill me too. There were more messages, dozens of them, laying out the whole plan. "Cassandra, the trust requires his signature. We can't access it while he's alive. Jerome, maybe we can forge." "Cassandra, forgery is risky. Easier to make him disappear. I know a guy who can make it look natural." "Jerome, after the wedding?" "Cassandra, reception would be perfect. Heart attack from all the excitement. I've got pills that'll do it. Slip them in his champagne, nobody will suspect anything." Devin was sitting in Carmen's rocking chair, playing with a small toy car he'd found in one of the boxes. He had no idea the adults around him were planning murder, like they were deciding what to serve for dinner. I found more evidence in the bottom of the folder. Bank records showing Torres's construction company had been laundering money through fake development projects. Carmen had traced payments from Jerome's account to Torres, then from Torres to Cassandra. But the piece that broke my heart was a handwritten letter from Jerome to Cassandra, dated just 2 weeks ago. "I know what we're planning is wrong. Dad raised me better than this. But I can't let Torres hurt Devin. If something happens to my father, at least my son will be safe. Please make it quick. Don't let him suffer. My boy was so deep in this mess he thought murder was mercy. There was more: insurance policies that had been changed to name Cassandra as beneficiary, legal documents prepared to challenge my mental competency if the murder plan failed, even receipts for the pills she planned to use to stop my heart. Carmen had found it all. Every piece of evidence that proved my son and his fiancée were planning to kill me for money. And it had gotten her killed. The last item in the folder was a copy of Carmen's death certificate. Cause of death: accidental drowning after vehicle left roadway. But clipped to it was a mechanic's report that Carmen had commissioned the day before she died. Her brakes had been cut. They murdered her, I said out loud, finally accepting what my heart had known all along. She was getting close to exposing them, so they cut her brake lines and sent her into Miller's Creek. Ellis was reading over my shoulder, his face gray with shock. "Marcus, we have to call the police. Tonight. Right now." "With what?" "Carmen's been dead for 2 years. This investigation she did, a good lawyer could say she was paranoid, mentally unstable after her accident at work. That she made up this whole conspiracy because she was jealous of Jerome's new relationship. But the evidence is all circumstantial. Photos can be explained away. Text messages can be faked. Even if they believe us, how long would it take to build a case? Weeks? Months? And what happens to Devin while we're waiting for justice?" I looked at my grandson, still rocking slowly in that old chair, humming a song Carmen used to sing to him. Torres expected his money. Cassandra expected her inheritance. And Jerome expected his father to die tonight. "We're going back to that wedding," I said, folding the evidence and putting it in my jacket pocket. "But this time we're going to be ready for them." The hunters were about to become the hunted. In the very back of Carmen's evidence folder, I found a small digital recorder wrapped in a plastic bag. A note taped to it read, "Final recording made the night before they killed me. This is the proof you need." My hands trembled as I unwrapped it. Ellis moved closer, and even Devin stopped rocking in his chair, sensing something important was about to happen. I pressed play. What came out of that tiny speaker was the most chilling conversation I'd ever heard in my 73 years on this earth. Carmen's voice came first, whispering, "It's Tuesday night, March 15th. I'm recording this from my car outside Torres's construction office. Jerome and Cassandra are inside. I can see them through the window." Then the audio shifted, becoming clearer. She must have gotten closer to wherever they were talking. A man's voice, rough and cold, "Your daddy-in-law is the problem, Jerome. As long as he's breathing, that trust fund stays locked up tight." That had to be Torres. Even through the recording, his voice made my skin crawl. Jerome's voice came next, and my heart broke all over again. "I know, Mr. Torres. But he's my father. There has to be another way." "Another way?" Torres laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You owe me $340,000. My patience ran out 6 months ago. You want to keep that pretty little boy of yours safe? You better find a solution fast." "Don't threaten my son," Jerome said, but his voice shook. "I'm not threatening nobody," Torres replied. "I'm stating facts. Accidents happen to whole families when debts don't get paid. Cars go off roads. Houses catch fire. Children disappear from playgrounds." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Cassandra's voice cut through like a knife. "Baby, listen to Vincent. Your father is old. Old men have heart attacks all the time. Especially at stressful events like weddings. Cassandra. I've done this before, Jerome. It's easier than you think. A few pills in his champagne, everyone thinks it's natural. The stress of seeing his son get married, dancing too much, drinking too much. Happens every day." Ellis grabbed my arm so tight it hurt. "We were hearing them plan my murder like they were discussing the weather." "Tell him about the backup plan," Torres said. Cassandra's voice turned businesslike, efficient. "If the heart attack doesn't work, we stage a car accident on his way home. I know people who can make brake lines fail at just the right moment. Make it look like mechanical failure. Like what happened to Carmen," Jerome said quietly. My blood stopped moving. "Carmen got too close," Torres said matter-of-factly. "She was asking questions, hiring investigators, digging where she didn't belong. So we handled it." "You handled it," Jerome repeated. "Cassandra handled it," Torres corrected. "Cut the brake lines while Carmen was at work, loosened the lug nuts on her front wheel. By the time she hit that curve on Miller Road doing 45, she was already dead. Went into that creek so clean even the cops called it driver error. I had to grip the edge of the table to keep from falling over. They were talking about murdering Carmen like they were discussing grocery shopping. The recording continued with Cassandra coaching Jerome. After your father's accident, you'll be devastated. The grieving son who lost his father right after his wedding. The community will support you. They'll help you get custody of Devin, and as his guardian, you can access the trust fund to pay Vincent and start fresh. What if people get suspicious? 2 deaths in the same family? Lightning strikes twice sometimes, Torres said with another cold laugh. Besides, your daddy's old. Carmen was young. Different circumstances, different causes. Nobody's going to connect them. And if they do? Then we handle that problem when it comes up, Cassandra said. But it won't come up. Trust me. The recording went on for another few minutes, laying out details that made my stomach turn. They'd already picked out the pills, something that would cause a heart attack but break down in the body quickly, leaving no trace. They'd identified the best time during the reception, right after the toasts when I'd be relaxed and off guard. They'd even arranged for a specific ambulance crew that Torres had paid off to declare me dead at the scene without too many questions. When the recording finally ended, the storage unit was silent except for the sound of Devin humming softly to himself. They killed Carmen, I said out loud, finally accepting the truth I'd been avoiding for 2 years. And tonight they're planning to kill me. Ellis was pale as a sheet. Marcus, we have to call the police. Right now. I looked at my watch. 12:15 a.m. The wedding reception was still going strong, probably wouldn't wind down until 2 or 3 in the morning. But according to the recording, they planned to make their move during the toasts. How long do wedding toasts usually last? I asked Ellis. 30 minutes, maybe an hour if the families are big talkers. That meant I had maybe 2 hours to figure out how to stop them. 2 hours to save my own life and protect my grandson. But first I had to get Devin somewhere safe. Because if they were willing to kill Carmen for getting too close to the truth, they wouldn't hesitate to hurt a 5-year-old boy who might have seen too much. The hunters were closing in. But they didn't know their prey was fighting back. At 12:45 a.m., I made the hardest decision of my life. I was going back into that ballroom, knowing they planned to kill me before the night was over. But this time I wouldn't be walking in blind. Pastor Ellis helped me strap a small recording device under my shirt collar, the same type Carmen had used to capture their murder confession. The church had bought it for recording sermons, but tonight it would capture something much more important. You sure about this, Marcus? Ellis asked as he adjusted the tiny microphone. We could just take this evidence to the police and let them handle it. I looked at Devin, safe in the back seat of Ellis's car with Sister Margaret from the church. She was a retired teacher who'd raised 6 kids of her own and had arms strong enough to protect my grandson if things went wrong. Police would need warrants, investigations, time we don't have, I said. By morning, Torres could disappear and take Cassandra with him. Or worse, they could hurt Devin to keep us quiet. Ellis nodded grimly. What do you need me to do? Give me 30 minutes to get back inside and get them talking. Then you call Detective Morrison at Atlanta PD. Tell him you have evidence of a murder conspiracy happening right now at the Buckhead Grand Hotel. Make sure he brings backup. And if they try to poison you before then? I patted my jacket pocket where I'd hidden a small bottle of Ipecac syrup Ellis had grabbed from the church first aid kit. Soon as I feel anything strange, I take this and start vomiting. Hard to poison a man who can't keep anything down. The hotel parking lot was still full of wedding guests' cars. Through the ballroom windows, I could see people dancing, laughing, celebrating my son's marriage while his bride planned my murder. I walked through those doors like a man heading to his own funeral. Because in a way I was. The reception was in full swing. The band played slow jazz while couples swayed on the dance floor. Jerome and Cassandra sat at the head table, her hand resting on his arm like she owned him. Which I suppose she did. Torres was easy to spot, a thick man in an expensive suit standing near the bar, checking his watch every few minutes, probably counting down to my death. I made my way back to my table, nodding at other guests, smiling like I'd just stepped out for some air. The wedding favor was still sitting where I'd left it, innocent as you please. Marcus. Cassandra's voice rang out across the ballroom. There you are. We were wondering where you disappeared to. She glided over in her white dress, all smiles and false concern. Up close, her eyes were cold as January morning. Just needed some fresh air, I said, sitting down at my place. Beautiful wedding, sweetheart. You make a lovely bride. Thank you. She leaned in closer, and I caught a whiff of expensive perfume mixed with something else. Something medicinal. I saved you some champagne for the toast. Can't celebrate without the father of the groom. She handed me a flute filled with golden liquid. The same color as honey. The same color as death. That's thoughtful of you, I said, accepting the glass but not drinking. Jerome's lucky to have found someone who cares so much about family. Her smile got sharper. Family means everything to me, Marcus. I'd do anything to protect the people I love. I almost laughed at the irony. She was planning my murder and calling it love. Jerome approached our table looking nervous. Dad, you feeling okay? You look a little pale. Just tired, son. It's been a long day. Maybe you should take it easy, Cassandra suggested, her voice dripping with fake concern. Have some champagne. It might help you relax. She was pushing hard for me to drink, which meant whatever was in that glass was probably going to kill me in the next 10 minutes. I lifted the flute toward my lips, then paused. You know what? I'm feeling a little queasy. Might be something I ate earlier. Maybe I should stick to water for now. Cassandra's mask slipped for just a second. I saw frustration flash across her face before she caught herself. Of course, she said smoothly. We want you to feel your best. She moved away and I watched her stop at Torres's table. They had a quick, heated conversation. Torres looked at his watch again, then at me, then nodded toward the bar. Plan B was about to start. A few minutes later, a waiter I didn't recognize appeared at my table with a fresh glass of water and a small plate of wedding cake. Compliments of the bride, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The cake looked delicious. Chocolate with white frosting and delicate sugar flowers. But I'd bet my life savings there was more than sugar in those flowers. That's very kind, I said, cutting a small piece with my fork. Cassandra thinks of everything. I brought the fork halfway to my mouth, then set it down. You know what? I think I'll save room for the real dessert course. Don't want to spoil my appetite. The waiter's smile tightened. The bride specifically requested that you try this piece. She said it's your favorite chocolate with vanilla buttercream. Now they were getting desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I picked up my fork again, but instead of eating the cake, I used it to point toward the head table. Tell you what, why don't you take this back to Cassandra and tell her I said thank you, but I'm watching my sugar intake these days. Doctor's orders. The waiter hesitated, clearly unsure what to do. His instructions were probably to make sure I ate that cake, but he couldn't force-feed me in front of 200 witnesses. Well, I'll let her know, he said, finally taking the plate back. As soon as he walked away, I saw Torres get up from his table and head toward the exit. Making a phone call, probably. Calling in reinforcements for when the poison plan failed. I checked my watch. 1:15 a.m. Ellis should be calling the police any minute now. All I had to do was stay alive until they arrived. But as I watched Cassandra whispering urgently to Jerome at the head table, both of them looking in my direction with expressions that could freeze fire, I realized they weren't going to wait much longer. One way or another, they planned to kill me tonight. The only question was whether I'd live long enough to stop them. At 1:25 a.m., the ballroom lights dimmed and the band leader tapped his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for our toast to the happy couple. This was it. According to Carmen's recording, they planned to poison me during the toasts when everyone would be focused on the speeches and wouldn't notice one old man having a heart attack in the back. Cassandra appeared at my table with a fresh champagne flute, this one with a little more foam at the top than the others. Marcus, you simply must have some champagne for the toasts. It would be rude not to participate. Her voice was sweet as honey, but her eyes held the coldness of a snake. Of course, sweetheart, I said, accepting the glass. The recording device under my collar was picking up every word. Wouldn't dream of missing my son's special moment. Torres moved closer to our table, positioning himself where he could see everything. He kept checking his phone like he was waiting for a signal. The best man started his speech, something about friendship and love and new beginnings. But I wasn't listening to him. I was listening to Cassandra whispering to the waiter who'd brought the poisoned cake earlier. Make sure he drinks it all, she said quietly. The dosage needs to be exact or it won't look natural. My blood ran cold, but I kept my face calm. The recording device was capturing every word. How long until it takes effect? The waiter asked. 5 to 7 minutes for full cardiac arrest, Cassandra replied matter-of-factly. It'll look like excitement from the wedding triggered a heart attack. Very believable for a man his age. I lifted the champagne flute toward my lips, then paused as if something had caught my attention. Oh, looks like Jerome wants to say something. My son stood up at the head table, looking nervous and pale. Poor boy probably didn't know if he should hope the poison worked or pray it didn't. I want to thank everyone for being here tonight, Jerome began, his voice shaking slightly. Especially my father, who taught me everything I know about being a man. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Torres moved even closer and I heard him murmur into his phone, "Target has the package. Stand by for confirmation." Package? They were talking about my murder like it was a delivery. Dad, Jerome continued, would you stand up? I want everyone to see the man who raised me. This was perfect. If I was standing when the poison hit, my collapse would be even more dramatic. More believable. I got to my feet, champagne glass still in my hand, and raised it toward my son. To Jerome and Cassandra, I said loud enough for the whole room to hear. May your marriage be built on honesty and trust. Cassandra's smile faltered for just a second. Now drink up, Dad, Jerome said, his voice cracking. To new beginnings. I brought the glass to my lips one more time, tilted it back, and let the poisoned champagne touch my tongue. It tasted bitter, metallic. Like pennies and desperation. But instead of swallowing, I let the liquid pool in my mouth, then suddenly doubled over like I was going to be sick. Oh no, I gasped, spitting the champagne onto the floor. I think I'm going to. And then I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out the bottle of Ipecac Ellis had given me, and drank the whole thing in one gulp. Within 30 seconds, I was vomiting violently all over the white tablecloth. Call 911, someone shouted. Get a doctor, yelled another guest. But through my retching, I saw Cassandra's face go white with panic. This wasn't part of their plan. I was supposed to have a clean heart attack, not throw up the poison all over their perfect wedding reception. Torres was on his phone again, speaking urgently. Target rejected the package. Repeat, Target rejected the package. Move to Plan C. Plan C. That had to be the backup murder method. As I continued retching, I saw Torres signal to two men in dark suits who'd been standing near the bar all night. They started moving toward me through the crowd of concerned wedding guests. But then the ballroom doors burst open. Detective Morrison and 6 Atlanta police officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Behind them came Pastor Ellis, pointing directly at Torres. Vincent Torres, Detective Morrison called out, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Wedding guests screamed and dove under tables. The band stopped playing mid-note. Champagne glasses crashed to the floor. Torres tried to run, but the officers surrounded him before he could take 3 steps. Cassandra Wells, Detective Morrison continued, you're also under arrest for the murder of Carmen Rodriguez and conspiracy to commit murder. Cassandra's mask finally slipped completely. Gone was the sweet bride, replaced by a cold-eyed killer who looked capable of anything. You can't prove anything, she snarled at me. You're just a paranoid old man. I straightened up, wiping my mouth with a napkin, and smiled. Actually, I can prove everything. I reached under my collar and pulled out the small recording device, holding it up for everyone to see. I've been recording this whole conversation, I announced to the room, including your discussion about the exact dosage needed to give me a heart attack. Cassandra's face went from white to green. Torres stopped struggling against the officers holding him. You want to hear the best part? I continued, my voice getting stronger. I've also got Carmen's final recording, where she captured you 3 planning her murder 2 years ago. Jerome collapsed into his chair like a puppet with cut strings. Dad, I'm sorry, he whispered. I'm so sorry. They said they'd hurt Devin if I didn't. I know, son, I said sadly. But you should have come to me. We could have figured out another way. The police were reading Torres and Cassandra their rights while wedding guests stood around in shocked silence. 200 people had just watched a murder conspiracy unfold at what was supposed to be a celebration of love. What happened next left 200 wedding guests speechless. If you want to see how real justice looks when family tries to destroy family, subscribe now, because what my son said next would either destroy our relationship forever or finally set us both free. As the handcuffs clicked shut around Cassandra's wrists, she turned to me with pure hatred in her eyes. This isn't over, old man, she hissed. You have no idea what you've done. But I did know what I'd done. I'd saved my grandson's life. And finally gotten justice for Carmen. Detective Morrison looked at the crowd of stunned wedding guests, then at me. Mr. Jennings, do you want to play that recording for everyone here? They have a right to know what they almost witnessed. I looked around the ballroom at 200 faces staring back at me. These were our friends, our neighbors, our church family. People who'd known Jerome since he was a little boy, who'd brought casseroles after Nia died, who'd cried at Carmen's funeral. They deserve to know the truth. Play it, I said. Detective Morrison took the recording device and connected it to the ballroom sound system. The room went dead silent except for the hum of air conditioning and the distant sound of traffic outside. Then Carmen's voice filled the space, clear and strong. It's Tuesday night, March 15th. I'm recording this from my car outside Torres's construction office. I watched the faces in the crowd as they heard my daughter-in-law's voice from beyond the grave. Shock, confusion, then growing horror as the conversation unfolded. Torres's cold voice, your daddy-in-law is the problem, Jerome. As long as he's breathing, that trust fund stays locked up tight. Jerome's response, I know, Mr. Torres, but he's my father. There has to be another way. And then the words that made several wedding guests gasp out loud. Accidents happen to whole families when debts don't get paid. Cars go off roads. Houses catch fire. Children disappear from playgrounds. Mrs. Patterson from our church covered her mouth with her hands. Mr. Williams, who'd been Jerome's little league coach, shook his head in disbelief. But the worst was still coming. Cassandra's voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. Your father is old. Old men have heart attacks all the time. Especially at stressful events like weddings. Jerome's voice, tell him about the backup plan. And then the confession that broke my heart all over again. Carmen got too close. She was asking questions, hiring investigators, digging where she didn't belong. So we handled it. You handled it, Jerome's voice repeated. Cut the brake lines while Carmen was at work, loosened the lug nuts on her front wheel. By the time she hit that curve on Miller Road doing 45, she was already dead. The ballroom erupted. Oh my God, someone screamed. They killed Carmen, another voice shouted. That sweet girl with a little boy. I saw tears streaming down faces, hands clenched into fists, wedding guests looking at Jerome and Cassandra like they were monsters that had crawled out from under a rock. Because that's exactly what they were. The recording continued with more details about their plan to poison me, to stage my heart attack, to steal Devin's inheritance. Every word was another nail in their coffin. When it finally ended, the silence was deafening. Then Jerome stood up. His face was white as his shirt, tears streaming down his cheeks. The confident groom from an hour ago was gone, replaced by a broken man who looked like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. It's all true, he said, his voice barely a whisper but carrying clearly in the silent ballroom. Every word. Cassandra whipped around to face him. Shut up, Jerome. Don't say another word. But my son kept talking, the words pouring out like water from a broken dam. I owed Torres money. So much money. I was gambling, trying to win back what I'd lost, but I just kept losing more. His voice cracked. He said he'd hurt Devin if I didn't pay. Kill him like he killed Carmen. Jerome, stop, Cassandra hissed. No, Jerome said, turning to face the crowd. They need to know. You all need to know what kind of man I became. He looked directly at me, tears streaming down his face. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I was weak and scared and I let them manipulate me into thinking murder was the only way to protect my son. The pain in his voice was real. The regret was real. But so was the fact that he'd been willing to let them kill me for money. I knew they killed Carmen, he continued. I suspected it when her brakes failed, but I didn't want to believe it. Then Cassandra told me exactly how they did it and I still didn't go to the police. I was too scared, too deep in debt, too weak to do the right thing. Pastor Ellis stepped forward from where he'd been standing with the police. Jerome, son, why didn't you come to the church? We could have helped you with the debt, found another way. Because I was ashamed, Jerome sobbed. Because I disappointed my father, failed my first wife, and I thought I could fix everything if I just won one big poker game. But the hole kept getting deeper and Torres kept threatening Devin, and when Cassandra showed up offering a solution, he looked at his new bride, handcuffed and glaring at him with pure hatred. She made it sound so easy, so clean. Just let my father have a heart attack at the wedding, and all our problems would be solved. The debt would be paid, Devin would be safe, and I could start over. But it wasn't clean, I said quietly. It was murder. You were planning to murder your own father. Jerome's legs gave out and he collapsed back into his chair. I know. God help me, I know. And I'll have to live with that for the rest of my life. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Jerome Rodriguez, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to murder in the death of Carmen Rodriguez. As they handcuffed my son, I felt a strange mix of heartbreak and relief. Heartbreak because I was watching my boy destroy his life. Relief because the truth was finally out and Devin would be safe. The wedding guests were talking among themselves now, processing what they'd just heard. Some were crying. Others looked angry. A few were already heading for the exits, probably calling their own family members to make sure they were safe. Mrs. Patterson approached me with tears in her eyes. Marcus, honey, are you okay? Do you need anything? That's when it hit me. After everything that had happened tonight, the murder attempt, the arrests, the family betrayal, my community was still there for me. Still ready to help, to support, to stand by an old man whose son had tried to kill him. I'm going to be fine, I told her, and for the first time in 2 years I actually meant it. Because the truth was out. Carmen's murder was solved. The conspirators were in custody. And Devin was safe. Finally, completely safe. 6 months later, I sat in a Fulton County courtroom watching Vincent Torres get sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair and no patience for murderers, read the charges in a voice that could cut glass. First-degree murder in the death of Carmen Rodriguez. Conspiracy to commit murder in the attempted killing of Marcus Jennings. Racketeering. Money laundering. Terroristic threats against a minor child. Torres showed no emotion as the bailiff led him away in shackles. Just cold, dead eyes that had probably watched too many people suffer to feel anything anymore. Cassandra was next. The prosecutor had built an airtight case using Carmen's evidence and the recordings from the wedding night. 3 previous marriages. 3 convenient deaths. 3 life insurance payouts. 25 years to life, the judge announced. With the recommendation that you serve every single day. Cassandra finally cracked when she heard that sentence. She started sobbing, pleading for mercy, claiming she'd been manipulated by Torres. But it was too late for crocodile tears. The jury had heard her voice on those recordings, coldly planning my murder like she was ordering groceries. Jerome's sentencing was the hardest part. My son had cooperated fully with the investigation, providing testimony that helped convict Torres and Cassandra. His lawyer argued for leniency based on the threats against Devin and Jerome's genuine remorse. But murder conspiracy is murder conspiracy regardless of the reasons. 12 years, the judge said, looking directly at Jerome. You will serve a minimum of 8 years before being eligible for parole. Jerome nodded, accepting the sentence without argument. He'd aged 10 years and 6 months, his face gaunt and hollow. Prison would age him even more. After the hearing, they let me speak with him for a few minutes before they took him back to his cell. Dad, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I know you probably can't forgive me. I know I don't deserve it. But please don't let Devin forget that I loved him. Whatever else I did wrong, I loved that boy. I looked at my son through the reinforced glass, this man I'd raised from a baby, and felt my heart break all over again. I'll make sure he knows, I said. But Jerome, you need to understand something. Love isn't enough when it comes without courage. You had other choices. You could have come to me, to Pastor Ellis, to the church community. Instead, you chose the easy path that led to murder. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I was scared. So was Carmen. But she chose to fight for the truth instead of running from it. That's the difference between courage and cowardice. It was the last time I visited him in prison. Not out of hatred, but because Devin needed to focus on healing, not on maintaining a relationship with a father who'd planned to orphan him for money. The legal process also revealed the full scope of Torres's operation. The FBI found evidence of money laundering, loan sharking, and at least 6 other suspicious deaths over the past decade. Carmen's investigation had exposed a criminal empire that went far beyond our family's tragedy. But the most important outcome was securing Devin's future. The trust fund Carmen had set up was completely protected. With Torres in prison and Cassandra stripped of any legal claims, the money would grow safely until Devin turned 18. By then, it would be enough to pay for college, buy a house, start a business, whatever he wanted to do with his life. I was awarded full custody without any legal challenges. Devin moved into my house permanently, and we started the slow process of building a new normal together. The church community rallied around us in ways that reminded me why faith matters. Sister Margaret helped with childcare when I had court dates. Pastor Ellis organized a legal fund to help other families facing financial fraud. The congregation took up collections to pay for Devin's therapy and install security systems at my house. Because even though the immediate danger was over, I wasn't taking any chances with my grandson's safety. Devin handled everything better than I expected. Children are more resilient than adults give them credit for. He understood in his 5-year-old way that his daddy had made very bad choices and would have to live somewhere else for a long time. But he also understood that his grandpa would always keep him safe. The nightmares came and went. Sometimes he'd wake up crying, asking if the bad people were coming back. I'd sit with him until he fell asleep again, reminding him that the bad people were locked up where they couldn't hurt anyone. Dr. Sarah Chin, the child psychologist the court recommended, helped us both process the trauma. She taught me how to answer Devin's questions honestly without overwhelming him with details he was too young to understand. Children need truth, she explained during one of our sessions. But they need it in portions they can digest. As he gets older, you can share more of the story. For now, he just needs to know he's safe and loved. And he was both those things. Completely and absolutely. The insurance money from Carmen's death was also substantial. Another $1 million that went directly into Devin's trust fund. Blood money in a way, but money that would honor Carmen's sacrifice by giving her son every opportunity in life. Some nights, I'd sit on my porch and think about the chain of events that led us here. If Carmen hadn't been brave enough to investigate, if she hadn't hidden that evidence, if Devin hadn't trusted his instincts at the wedding, any one missing link and we'd all be dead. Instead, justice was served. The guilty were punished. The innocent were protected. And my grandson had a future as bright as the Georgia sun. 1 year after that nightmare wedding night, I stood in my backyard watching Devin chase fireflies while the scent of barbecue drifted over from Mrs. Patterson's house next door. My grandson was laughing, the kind of deep, belly-shaking laughter that comes from a child who feels completely safe in his world. At 6 years old, he'd grown 3 inches and gained the confidence that comes from knowing the people who love you will fight monsters to keep you protected. "Grandpa, look," he called out, cupping his hands around a particularly bright firefly. "I caught one. Let me see, little man." He opened his hands just enough for us both to peek at the tiny light blinking in his palms, then gently released it back into the summer evening. Carmen had taught him that, to appreciate beautiful things without trying to own them. The house behind us was different now. New locks, security system, cameras at every entrance. But it didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like home. We'd made changes after the trial ended. Devin's room was bigger, painted the color of a Georgia sky with glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling. The living room had been rearranged to make space for his art table, where he spent hours drawing pictures of spaceships and dinosaurs and sometimes, when he missed her, angels that looked like his mama. Dr. Chin said the nightmares would fade with time, and she was right. Devin rarely woke up scared anymore. When he did, I'd sit with him and we'd talk about brave things, how his mama had been brave enough to leave evidence that saved our lives, how sometimes being brave means asking for help instead of trying to handle everything alone. School was going well. Devin's teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, no relation to Jerome, just one of those coincidences that makes you believe in God's sense of humor, said he was reading above grade level and had made friends with half his class. The trust fund Carmen set up was paying for private tutoring and whatever activities he wanted to try. Right now, that was soccer and piano lessons. The boy's got good hands, his piano teacher told me last week. Music comes natural to him. Maybe he got that from Carmen. She used to hum while she cooked, little melodies that would stick in your head for days. I'd started visiting Jerome again after taking 6 months away from the prison. Not for his sake, but for Devin's. Children need to understand their stories, even the painful parts, and someday Devin would ask questions about his father that deserved honest answers. Jerome looked healthier now. Prison had forced him to get clean. No gambling, no alcohol, no running from his problems. He'd been going to counseling, working in the prison library, earning his GED. "I think about that night every day," he told me during our last visit. About how close I came to losing everything that mattered for money that wouldn't have solved anything anyway. Money never solves problems, I replied. It just changes what problems you have. He'd written letters to Devin, age-appropriate ones that talked about taking responsibility for mistakes and how love means wanting the best for someone even when it costs you everything. Dr. Chin helped me decide which ones to share and when. The community response had been overwhelming. Pastor Ellis started a financial literacy program at the church to help families avoid the kind of debt traps that had snared Jerome. The congregation raised money for a playground at the elementary school in Carmen's memory. And every third Sunday, we held a special service for families dealing with elder abuse or financial fraud. I'd become something of an advocate myself, speaking at legal conferences about the warning signs of inheritance scams. The district attorney's office asked me to help train prosecutors on how these conspiracies work. It felt good to turn our tragedy into something that could protect other families. The legal reforms came slowly, but they came. New laws requiring additional safeguards for trust funds involving elderly co-trustees. Tougher penalties for financial crimes against seniors. Better training for police officers investigating suspicious deaths that might be inheritance-related murders. Carmen's case had opened doors that helped other families find justice. On quiet evenings like this one, when Devin was playing safely in our backyard and the neighborhood was settling into its evening rhythms, I'd think about how different things could have been. If I hadn't listened to a 5-year-old's fears. If I hadn't found Carmen's evidence. If I'd been too proud or too scared to ask for help. Any one of those choices could have cost us everything. Instead, we had this, a secure home, a bright future, and the kind of community support that reminds you why faith matters. "Grandpa," Devin called out, running over with grass stains on his knees and pure joy on his face. "Mrs. Patterson said she's making cookies tomorrow and I can help. Can I? Please?" "Of course you can, little man. Mrs. Patterson makes the best chocolate chip cookies in Atlanta." He grinned and hugged my legs tight. "I love you, Grandpa." "I love you too, Devin. More than all the fireflies in Georgia." This story proves that protecting family sometimes means making the hardest choices. Share in the comments if you've ever had to choose justice over comfort. Your courage inspires others facing impossible decisions, and shows that community strength can overcome any betrayal. As we headed inside for bedtime stories and evening prayers, I said a quiet thank you to Carmen and Nia for watching over us, for giving us the wisdom and courage to survive, and for reminding me that love without action is just a pretty word. Real love fights. Real love protects. Real love chooses what's right over what's easy. And sometimes if you're very lucky, real love wins. Now that you've heard my story, let me share some hard-earned wisdom that might save your family from walking down the same dark road we traveled. First, trust your instincts, especially the instincts of children. When my 5-year-old grandson told me something felt wrong at that wedding, every adult instinct told me to dismiss it as childhood fear. But children see things we miss because they haven't learned to ignore the warning signals yet. If a child in your family seems scared of someone new, pay attention. Ask questions. Don't assume they're being difficult or jealous. Second, know the warning signs of financial manipulation. It starts small, requests to borrow money with emotional stories attached. Just until my next paycheck. The medical bills are higher than expected. If I don't pay this by Friday, something terrible will happen. Watch for personality changes in family members who suddenly have money problems. Are they secretive about their activities? Do they get defensive when you ask simple questions about their finances? Are they pushing you to make legal or financial decisions quickly, without time to think or get advice? In Jerome's case, I saw the signs but explained them away because I wanted to believe my son was the man I'd raised him to be. That kind of hope can blind you to danger. Third, protect your legal and financial documents. Keep copies in multiple locations. Make sure trusted friends or advisors know where everything is stored. If you're a co-trustee or beneficiary of anything valuable, understand exactly what that means and what powers you have. Carmen saved our lives by setting up protections I didn't even know existed. She made sure I couldn't be cut out of decisions about Devin's trust fund. She documented everything and left evidence where I could find it. That preparation made the difference between justice and murder. Fourth, build your support network before you need it. When crisis hit our family, I had Pastor Ellis, the church community, and neighbors like Mrs. Patterson ready to help. You can't fight these battles alone. Financial predators count on isolation, They want you to feel like you have nowhere to turn except to them. Join a church, a community center, a neighborhood association. Something where people know your name and would notice if you suddenly disappeared or started acting strange. These connections aren't just social, they're lifelines. Fifth, document everything. If someone is pressuring you financially, keep records. Save text messages, emails, phone calls if your state allows it. Take photos of documents they want you to sign. Write down conversations with dates and times. Carmen's recordings were what put Torres and Cassandra in prison. Without that evidence, it would have been our word against theirs, and dead people don't make good witnesses. Sixth, don't enable destructive behavior in the name of love. This was my hardest lesson. I wanted to save Jerome from the consequences of his choices, but that desire almost got me killed and would have left Devin orphaned. Real love sometimes means saying no. Real love means letting people face the results of their decisions. Real love protects the innocent even when it costs you the person you're trying to save. Seventh, know that you're not responsible for other people's choices. Jerome made his decisions as a grown man. I didn't cause his gambling addiction. I didn't force him to borrow money from criminals. I didn't make him agree to murder conspiracy. The guilt will try to tell you otherwise. If only I'd been a better father. If only I'd seen the signs sooner. If only I'd helped him with money before it got this bad. Stop. You can only control your own choices. You can only protect the people you're responsible for protecting. In my case, that was Devin. Finally, remember that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's doing what's right despite the fear. I was terrified that night at the wedding. Terrified of losing my son, terrified of facing the truth about what he'd become, terrified of walking into a death trap. But Devin needed protection more than I needed comfort. Carmen deserved justice more than Jerome deserved protection from consequences. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable destruction, even when it breaks your heart. If this story has reached you when you needed it most, that's not coincidence. That's Carmen and Nia still protecting their family. Take whatever strength you need, honor those who guide you, and remember, the truth may hurt, but lies will kill you. 2 years have passed since that wedding night, and I'm sitting on my front porch watching Devin practice soccer kicks in the yard. He's 7 now, tall for his age, with Carmen's quick smile and her way of seeing straight through to the heart of things. The legal battles are over. Torres died in prison 6 months ago, heart attack, the warden said, though I suspect his past finally caught up with him. Cassandra is serving her time in a women's facility upstate, and according to her lawyer, she's found religion. I hope that's true, but I'm not holding my breath. Jerome will be eligible for parole in 4 more years. He writes to Devin every month now, letters that Dr. Chin helps us review before sharing them. They're good letters, full of remorse and hope and the kind of father love that should have been there from the beginning. Maybe prison taught him something about what really matters. I've decided that when Jerome gets out, if he stays clean and proves he's changed, Devin should have the chance to know his father. Not because Jerome deserves it, but because Devin deserves the choice. Children shouldn't have to carry their parents' mistakes forever. The trust fund has grown to over $4 million now. Devin's future is secure in ways Carmen could never have imagined when she set up those protections. College, graduate school, starting a business, buying a house, whatever path he chooses will be possible. But more than money, he has something Torres and Cassandra never understood. He has community. Every Sunday after church, our porch fills up with people who've become family by choice rather than blood. Pastor Ellis still stops by for coffee and Dominoes. Mrs. Patterson brings fresh cookies and homework help. Sister Margaret teaches Devin piano and tells him stories about his mama that keep Carmen's memory alive in ways that matter. The memorial garden we planted in Carmen's honor has become a gathering place for families dealing with financial fraud and elder abuse. We hold support meetings there twice a month, sharing stories and resources, making sure nobody has to face these predators alone. I've testified in 12 court cases now, helping prosecutors understand how these inheritance conspiracies work. The patterns are always the same: isolation, financial pressure, manufactured emergencies, and the manipulation of family loyalty. Knowing what to look for saves lives. Dr. Chin says Devin is one of the most resilient children she's ever worked with. The nightmares stopped completely 6 months ago. He still asks questions about that night sometimes, but they're thoughtful questions now, not fearful ones. He understands that good people sometimes make terrible choices, and that protecting the innocent is more important than protecting the guilty. Last week he asked me if I forgave his daddy. I forgive him for being weak, I told him honestly. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. Your daddy made choices that almost got us both killed. I can forgive him and still make sure those choices never put you in danger again. He thought about that for a while, then nodded. Like how I can love him but still live with you? Exactly like that, little man. The house feels different now than it did in those dark months after Nia died. It's full of life again, children's laughter, cooking smells, the sound of homework being discussed at the kitchen table. Devin has friends over for sleepovers. We host game nights and holiday dinners. The security system is still there, but it's background protection now, not front of mind fear. Every night before bed, Devin and I say prayers for Carmen and Nia, thanking them for watching over us and guiding us through the darkness. I tell him stories about his mama's courage, about how she saved our lives by being brave enough to investigate when something felt wrong. Will I be brave like Mama when I grow up? He asked me last night. You already are, son. You were brave enough to trust your feelings at that wedding. You were brave enough to tell me when something felt wrong. That's the kind of courage that matters most. He smiled and hugged me tight. I'm glad you're my grandpa. I'm glad you're my grandson, Devin. More than you'll ever know. If this story has reached you when you needed it most, that's not coincidence. That's Carmen and Nia still protecting their family. Take whatever strength you need, honor those who guide you, and remember, sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is the courage to do what's right, even when it breaks our hearts. The truth may be painful, but it's always better than a beautiful lie. And love, real love, will always find a way to win.